at a young age, I want to thank my three younger siblings for putting up with a lot of like random sports facts. I know for a fact that I was talking to a bunch of adults at family parties. I realized I wanted to do this when I first heard Jim Donovan say "Run, William, run" in Cleveland. When I first heard Tom Hamilton say "a swing and a drive." When Joe Tate, the voice of the Cavs, said "wham" with the right hand with LeBron James. I grew up in a town so passionate about their teams. When you live, breathe, sleep, die sports at the age of 5 or 6, I was watching games and I thought to myself, it is so cool right now that these people are calling these games and they're getting paid to do it. My brain was able to conclude at the age of like 6 or 7 that these people were doing this for a job. I started in grade school. I would do the PA announcements. I would bring up the science club was going to have their fair. Football practice has been moved 30 minutes. I would do anything that could be out there. All kinds of things because I thought this is my dream and I am going to find a way to.
The Field Talk podcast is presented by Roback. If you ever see me anywhere, I've been wearing Roback because from head to toe, they've got the best fit and the best feel. Right now, rocking one of the signature hoodies, but every time you turn, there is new gear, and that is no exception this upcoming season. It's not just new products, it's also new looks for some of your favorite products, from hats and quarter zips and polos and hoodies and pants and shorts and again, really everything that you could possibly need to get you ready for whatever it is you have on a given day. Roback has it. And for 20% off your first order, head on over to roback.com. That's RHOBACK.com and enter my name, Field, Field, for 20% off your first order. There's some things right now that seem to be trending all the way up. One of those things in life is John Fanta. If you're a college basketball fan, you probably know his name. You probably also know his energy and his enthusiasm. It is unmistakable. Few people resonate more with college basketball fans than John Fanta. But what you might not know about him is how exactly did he burst onto the scene, by the way, at under the age of 30 years old. On today's Field Talk podcast, we catch up with one of the signature voices in all of college hoops. And if John Fanta can't get you fired up for March, I don't know what can. John Fanta, one of the busiest men in all of college basketball. I was thinking about where to start this interview, and I felt like there was only one good question. What's the second best month of the year?
That's a good question, Field. I will go ahead and say, mm, look, I'm going to say October because I love the sports calendar at that point. So you are right. You're getting towards the heart of football. Those Saturdays and Sundays are just fantastic. And it's still early enough for me I mean, hopefully early enough, fingers crossed, as a native Clevelander that my Browns are still somewhat in competitive games, maybe. But yeah, it's just the fall crisp in the air. You've got the NBA revving up. You've got October baseball in full swing when baseball's at its best. You've got a couple of other either preseasons or seasons getting rolling in sports. And so it's Halloween brings out the uniqueness in everybody perhaps. I think that's high level. I don't like everyone's like, "Well, I love summer." I do too. But I don't just pick out 1 month there. I mean, I guess if I had to, I'd say July because it's a time for all of us to hit the shore and or hit the beach and have a funnel cake and walk the boardwalk or whatever you may do for your summer activity. But I'm gonna as the sports junkie, I think the thrill that March gives everybody, I think you do get a taste of it with how much is going on in the month of October because you just get some epic weekends between college football, the NFL, playoff baseball, NBA, hockey, everything is revving up in full swing.
I'm with you there. The rare sports equinox only hits in October, so I'm into it as well with that answer. I think that there are many of us, myself included, who now only know the fabric or only think of the fabric of college basketball with you very much in the thick of it. You're all over the place. You're beloved by fan bases across the country, obviously with a very strong foothold now in the Northeast and doing your work with the Big East. But I mean, there are probably fans who follow Iowa State basketball and their great run this year that also know and want to hear your opinion. What I'm not sure people realize is not even 30 years old. So I want to work backwards here. What was John Fanta like at a young age? And at what point did you say to yourself, I think I want to do this, meaning broadcast basketball for a living?
Well, I think at a young age, I want to thank my three younger siblings for probably putting up with a lot of like random sports facts and that growing up in Cleveland, that Jim Tomey was hitting 320 over his last 15 games and was just hitting bombs at Jacobs Field and trying to figure out what the Browns were going to do next. So and LeBron James got drafted to the Cavs when I was 7 years of age. So for me, I know for a fact that I was talking to a bunch of adults at family parties because my parents tell me that was the case. So I want to thank the younger kids for probably putting up with everything I was talking about. But when did I realize that I wanted to do this? I realized I wanted to do this when I first heard Jim Donovan a "Run, William, run" in Cleveland. When I first heard Tom Hamilton say, "A swing and a drive." When Joe Tate, the voice of the Cavs, said "wham" with the right hand with LeBron James. I I grew up in a town that Field you know well is so passionate about their teams. And yes, it is a football town. Huge. The Browns are religion in Northeast Ohio. They are everything. The mood of the town is based on how they are playing at the time. So at times it's not been great, but throughout the 2023 ride, I've never seen anything like it. So when you live, breathe, sleep, die sports at the age of 5 or 6, I was watching games and I thought to myself, it is so cool right now that these people are calling these games and they're getting paid to do it. Some My brain was able to conclude at the age of like 6 or 7 that these people were doing this for a job, a job.
Hmm, yeah.
And I started in grade school. I would do the PA announcements. I would bring up that Girl Scouts were meeting after school, and uh, the science club was going to have their fair, and football practice has been moved 30 minutes. I would do anything that could be out there. I would do mock weather reports. I would do all kinds of things because I thought this is my dream. This is my dream, and I am going to find a way to fulfill it. So for me, I knew very early that I really wanted to do this.
So, at what point, because I think that your energy is obviously unmistakable, but I think you also, and you may not, you may be too humble to admit as much, but there is such thing as a broadcaster's voice. You've got broadcaster's pipes. Was that something that you realized at a very early age as well? Or if not, was it something that maybe you developed while you were making PA announcements and doing things of that nature on your way to what the platform that you currently have?
Well, I think it goes back to you listen to these voices, you listen to TV, you listen to broadcasters, and so you develop an identity through them, not exactly like them, but I think that's how the voice grew. But yeah, this is a God given talent. It really is, and I'm glad that you brought it up, Field, because I do think that this is a big part of our industry, and of any industry for that matter. But I remember getting to like high school and then early college and then even early in my career. How about this? Still today, where people have said to me, you have this broadcaster's voice. Um, you also at times have hit an octave or two that I don't hear on TV very much from broadcasters. I rarely hear. And, have you thought about coaching? And have you thought about, of what everybody field, I'm sure at some point or another, somebody's thrown out the concept of, okay, have you ever looked at a voice coach? Like any play-by-play guy out there, whether their voice is more as deep as Morgan Freeman or what mine is, or whoever's is, I'm sure has gotten told that because it's all part of the equation. D- doesn't mean that I wouldn't be open to any of that because I'm always open to feedback and training and all that. I can tell you right now, though, I also think that if you try to be somebody you're not to the other side, you're not going to make it in this industry. People can read right through a lack of authenticity. So for me, I am who I am. I try to I take feedback and work on it as much as possible. My voice is my voice. And so this was a God-given talent. I've developed it myself. I haven't really had that, coaching session. Doesn't mean that couldn't happen, but I knew in high school. I started calling different games. And I got my start. I played freshman football in high school, guys. I was a turnstile as a left guard. I mean, quarterbacks got in the huddle. Quarterbacks got in the huddle. They looked around and they would call a 26 counter on two. And they looked to the right side, and I was on the left side, so they're not going my direction. And then they looked at my side, and all of a sudden you just saw the quarterback's eyes, and he went, like the eyes got real big because he's like, the blind side here is very much blind. And I could be in a situation where I don't want to, I don't want to have to miss a week of school because I'm at the Cleveland Clinic. So for me, the best thing for my quarterbacks was that I moved to the broadcast booth talking about them rather than attempting
Yeah.
to protect them. So I got done with freshman year of football. I was coming home from school every day. I would do the weight room program, the off season for football, and then I'd go home and play video games. And my dad said to me after about a week, "What are you doing with your time?" I said, I'm being a student. I'm in the off season program." He goes, "No, no, no." He's like, "You're at St. Ignatius High School." St. Ignatius is a powerhouse of a Cleveland high school. Chuck Kyle, you may know the name, you may not, has been an instrumental football force for years. He just retired back a couple years ago. He said, "You got to put your talents to you got to put them in place down there. You got to find something to do. You love talking about sports. Why don't you see if they have a broadcasting club?" I found that Ignatius did, and they're like, "Can you do camera on junior varsity basketball games?" And I was about 2 weeks into doing camera. I didn't know how to run a camera. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, but I just said yes. That's my advice to anybody that's trying to get in this or anything. Just say yes. Why? Because the game was at halftime. 2 weeks into my time doing camera, there was a game at halftime. And we're in high school. We all had a ton of random stuff happening in high school. We all remember some stuff. We don't remember everything. I'll never forget the play-by-play guy got up at the half and said, "I'm running for student senate. And I think I'm going to be student senate president." Thank God he won the election because he turned to our group and he said, "I can't do this anymore." And he took the headset off at halftime of the game and put it down on the table. And I'm looking at that headset you know, uh, like it's a golden treasure. I mean, it just it had that I'm like, this is my chance. And were they going to call on some random student to do the game at that point, or were they going to call on the guy who said yes to being a cameraman? Moderator of the club looks to me and says, "Can you go on?" I went on, got done, and he said, "You're back for good. Keep coming back, man." And the 2 years later, I played 1 year of junior varsity football. I was at Fawcett Stadium in the booth that Al Michaels and John Madden called the Hall of Fame game in for years, in the booth that's used now for that game. And I called the state championship football game for St. Ignatius, the last one that they won in 2011.
Mm,
I was in the
wow.
booth instead of freezing my ass off on the bench, where I wouldn't have been much use other than cheering the guys on. And I thought to myself, this is what I want to do for a living. This is where I'm meant to be and what I want to do. And to call these types of moments makes it, you're not going to call those moments every day. You live for those moments when you do get a chance to sit down and call a game. And so that's how I got revved up in this. And that's how I determined, that this voice, this technique, I just got to keep working on it and work through mistakes, and maybe I could do something with this.
So I don't want to skip over too many steps in your path, but here we are today. And again, college football, college basketball fans know you. They identify you as one of the signature voices that if my team is starting to make a push, I want to hear what John Fanta has to say. If my team is hitting the skids, or I'm in a down year like Kansas, what does John have to say about our team? Where are we actually at? Are we going to make the tournament? Are we going to be a real factor in the tournament? But before this, of course, there were some steps. You end up going to Seton Hall for college, a school that, of course, does have a rich basketball history. But early after college, how do you get going? You mentioned some of your advice earlier to young people that maybe want to get into broadcasting, led by always say yes. After college, where'd you get started? And what were some of the things that contributed to your platform continuing to grow?
So it really starts at the end of my senior year of college as I'm graduating. So I was looking at the job market like anybody that's trying to get in this, and I had done play by play. What's interesting is I hadn't done well before college. I had done some basketball, a variety of it. I obviously knew the sport well, but I had primarily done football. I had primarily done football. This is an example of just like you never know when you're in that dugout of life when they're going to tell you to go up to the plate and swing. So, I loved college basketball and I loved basketball, but I grew up in Cleveland. Like other than Norris Cole and Gary Waters putting up an amazing NCAA tournament run where they beat Farouk Aminu and Wake Forest when I was growing up, and other than watching where I fell in love with college basketball, a double overtime, let's see here, Wake Forest, West Virginia game at the Wolstein Center about 2 decades ago that featured Chris Paul and Kevin Pittsnogle and Mike Gansey, now Cavs general manager, were on West Virginia and found a way to win. That's where I fell in love with the sport during March Madness, a game that Ian Eagle called the Wolstein Center. Like, I didn't have a lot of basketball experience. So for me, I go to Seton Hall. They don't have football. So as a result, I'm really becoming, which nothing wrong with that because it ended up, I was able to find a way to differentiate, and I think that's college is what you make of it wherever you go. Everybody's proud of their alma mater. It's what you make of it. You have to go out and Seton Hall was so instrumental in giving me great opportunities, and I'm forever indebted to them for that. When I got to my senior year, I'm looking at the job market. I'm looking at the job market. Well, you're on job boards and you have relationships, and I had relationships with people, but like as a senior, you don't know how much you should start to rely on those, or like it's an uncomfortable position to be in. And I'm sure a lot of seniors in college, hopefully somebody out there is listening to this and they're wondering, how do I figure this job thing out? And now I tell seniors, you will figure it out. It's easy for me to say, but I'm like, you rely on your relationships and clean up that resume and see where it takes you. So I was talking about a job uh, down in Friday Night Lights territory, Texas. I want to say Katy, Texas. Some small towns down in Texas, and that were known for high school football. That took a lot of pride in different high school football. So I interview with a place. They loved me, and it was a typical like this is where you could start news market, and then I would continue to you just continue to grind and see where it takes you. So I had been doing work for the Big East in college for the conference, covering a variety of sports. So I went into the city and I met with a guy named Rick Gentile. Rick was a producer of the Olympics and NFL Today and a variety of other things for CBS Sports, back in the 90s. And Rick and I start talking, and we talked for about 2 hours, and we're close to the end of our meeting. And he said, "Well, good luck down in Katy, Texas, or whatever the town was, and I hope that things turn out nicely for you." I said, "Well, thank you, Rick, and I look, we'll see what happens." And I hadn't gotten the job yet, but in my head, I'm like, is this where my path's going to take me? Like, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to fly down to Texas. Let's face it, I'll have a social media brand, but it's going to take time to chip away, chip away, chip away. So I'm close to walking out of the office, and he said, "Why don't you come back in here and sit down?" So I turned around. I sat down. And I haven't told this story many times, so this is going to be fun for your show. He said, Jay Wright doesn't think that the Big East is getting enough coverage. And he's looking at it from the aspect of year round. At the time, like NBA Today and different properties with sports that were doing shows every day on sports that weren't always in season, like an NFL Live. But NFL Live's been around forever. But other sports were realizing like, hey, we've got to be part of the daily program if we're going to keep a profile with our fans. So he said, the Big East doesn't have college football, so it's not an SEC or an ACC today where they're constantly talking football throughout the year in some way, shape, or form. Jay Wright's belief was, let's talk basketball throughout the year. Let's differentiate ourselves. So he said, how would you feel if this was pitched? He's like, I don't have the position. I don't know what it even looks like, but would you be interested in it? All of a sudden, Friday Night Lights in Texas, a $31,000 job, maybe living for limited rent in an apartment, and not really knowing anybody from the town became potential to host this show. And I don't know what the money looks like, but it is New York City and it is the Big East. And Jay Wright's advocating, so it's got some legs. That's a nice proponent. He didn't know I was the one up for it. He might have turned away at that point. No, I'm just kidding. I love Jay and Jay's awesome. He is the best. He's so good. So I am sitting on Seton Hall's campus with like 10 days from moving out and being done with my senior year. And the Big East coaches, the coaches of the league. So Jay Wright, Ed Cooley, Greg McDermott, Kevin Miller at the time was at Seton Hall. Yeah, like that whole gang is gearing up to sit down and talk about a variety of topics. Among them is this host position to cover their league. They don't know who's going to take it or what it's going to look like. It gets brought up in a meeting. This something that you want to, you want to fund. It was going to be Big Ten Network, like hiring somebody like that. So I'm waiting for the phone call to say that the position's quote been approved and that you're going to get this. And I remember sitting in the Seton Hall Rec Center, and I got a phone call from that meeting room in Florida, from just outside, and they said position's been approved. And, would you be interested in this job? Do you want this job? And I'm like, Texas football, which I'm all for. I think Friday Night Lights is awesome, or a chance to stay around here and stay around New York and see where it takes me. And that's how I got started really covering college basketball in the Big East. That's how it revved up. And, you know, I just what I did was what I've done with any opportunity I get, regardless of what it is. You make the absolute most of it. What I didn't realize was the passion of the fan bases and how their social media presence has an SEC football fan like presence during college basketball season, because these people are so into it, into everything, and they were eating up content. That's what developed this quote, perfect storm of things where I got that job, guys. I'm in the Northeast. There's some major markets there. UConn's return has certainly helped to the Big East. And I just went all out. And I had a combination of things that that can be our next step of what's led me to television. But it to get started, it was really the Big East giving me a shot. That's how I got going.
The Big East, thank you from sincerely all of us as college basketball fans. And I now live in Connecticut, John. I've never seen an area with more flags flying for a specific cause. I guess I'll put this in the non political division. than Yukon basketball flags that are everywhere around my town, especially this time of the year, despite the season they are currently having. Um, so you used a word earlier that I think landed with not just me, but probably a lot of people that are watching it, which is authenticity. There are a lot of forces in today's media landscape that may push or nudge someone like you or I to do something for attention, perhaps at the risk of being bombastic. How, though, have you managed to sort of stay above the fray and be authentic? Was it hard to accept that whether people liked you for who you are or not, the likeliest path to success is staying true to who John Fanta is at his
It's
core?
everything. It absolutely is everything. And Field, as you well know, you're gonna get a tweet or a post to anything you say with someone either disagreeing or someone to get a rise out of you. You just roll with the punches. You have fun. And maybe you pick a slot or two a year where you give a funny response of "Have a nice night" or "God bless," and you don't do it for traffic, but you do it to say, "Hey, we're just having conversation here. It's sports. It's supposed to be fun."
Yeah.
Look,
You've mastered that part, though. You've mastered the tasteful. I don't call dunking on someone, but I don't like the people in our industry that just do it every time they get a
no,
negative tweet. At some point, all you're doing is feeding the wolves. But every once in a while, a well timed one is just good for the
it's good
soul.
for the soul. It is. It's good. It is good for the soul. I think you have to be willing to poke fun at yourself. You have to be willing to be a sports fan too. So, like, Field, you love football. So do I. We love sports. I love college basketball. So it's easy for me to do the job because I love it. And the authenticity is seen in the journey. For me, it's like just roll up your sleeves. I'm the son of a metal plating business owner in Cleveland, and the other a former teacher who's now a communications person working 40 hours a week at least. So it's a my parents worked hard for what they got. For me in college, I got a call. The athletic director at Seton Hall knew of someone at Fox. And the guy at Fox called the athletic director at Seton Hall and said, "We have summer internship opportunities." And the athletic director said, "Hey, Fox has summer internship opportunities." I go, "Okay, what are the details?" "They're in Los Angeles." "Okay, are they going to cover cost of travel or living?" "No." Which that's our role.
You're going to find a way, though,
Yeah,
right?
what's that?
You're going to find a way,
We're
though,
going to
even with all
find a
those
way.
not
We're
provided.
going to find
Yeah.
a way. So I booked a
Yeah.
one-way ticket. I got my bags in LA. I went out there myself. Airbnb was fairly new. It's hot as hell in Los Angeles in the summer. This subject matter doesn't do perfect with that. I'm sweating my tail off. I'm hauling to downtown Los Angeles, and I'm sure people are looking at me like, "Who the hell is this guy? What is he doing in downtown LA?" This is a Cleveland, Ohio. You know, that I was raised on AFC North football. Hollywood, come on now. I'm not Hollywood. God bless Hollywood, but I am not Hollywood. So I walk into Hollywood and I head over to this street that had my Airbnb on it in downtown Los Angeles. And in I walk into a hostel. That was what
Yeah.
Airbnb was willing to give me for $740 a month, which was as a lot as everybody when I say that they're like pretty good rate. LA 740 a
It
month. Wow,
probably
how'd
is.
you get that? What was a
Uh,
hostel?
I don't I don't know the LA real estate market enough, but I trust you on
I
that.
walk into the hostel again. Airbnb was like brand new. On one side of the room is a 60-year-old man from Africa named George trying to make a better living for himself. And he shook my hand. He goes, "I'm George, trying to make a better living for myself." And I said, "I'm John Fanta, and so am I." I said, "And I'm 20, and you're 60. Let's have a summer." And we would talk throughout the summer about the different projects we were doing. I was helping out as a production assistant. And he was in downtown LA trying to work in business, and he figured stuff out, and he got going, and he eventually moved out of there. And I eventually went back to New Jersey. what you see is what you get. I'm unfazed by I've seen a lot of things, been through different things on the journey. You nothing there's no event that you should be too big for. There's no person that you shouldn't talk to. I I get it, having kind of rolled up the sleeves and just grinded for it and say yes and be humble. Just be humble. Like nobody is whether we want to hear it or not. Like there are a few that are irreplaceable, but in reality, everybody can always step into somebody else's shoes in our human system. And so for me, it's like just do your job with joy and try to make the fans feel like you want to be there. Make them feel like you are into it as much as they are, if not more so. And it comes naturally for me because I am. And I love doing this. I never because of the process and the journey and showing up to a hostel and doing this internship and being up at this time and racing to the city for this and waiting, thinking about a job in Texas versus this job in New York and just being grateful that somebody called my name. When you've been through the process of forming relationships, of long nights and long days and trying to figure things out, when you do get on the air on national TV, as much as I'm calling the game with the joy I have for it, I'm calling the game grateful that somebody gave me the chance to be on your screen.
I want to ask you one more before I get into just a couple of quick hitters to wrap this all up. And we so appreciate your time here. And I don't know if this is something that's more specific to college basketball. And I'm not here to tell you that former players or coaches or executives can't be outstanding in the media, because there are many examples of those that have become that. But it's also hard for somebody that wasn't a former coach or GM or player to not just become a play by play voice for college basketball, but really a voice who your opinion of the on court product matters across the college basketball globe. If Gonzaga gets blown out by 24 in the conference championship game, their fans might ask you, what went wrong? What do you think allowed you to become somebody who, whether you have analyst in your bio or not, your analysis matters, and that's not a particularly common path in sports media.
No, it's not. I think for me it was one noticing the fact that early on I didn't have a ton of competition, and I don't think others. I think there's a niche angle to college basketball throughout the entire year. Throughout the entire year. Now in March, if you're the niche guy throughout the entire year, people are locked in on you. Similar to how they're locked into, the NFL draft guy now this time of year and heading into the draft or whatever may have you, or the fantasy guy in August. But for me, it was like I started covering the sport and I'm like, people are noticing. Okay. Well, I don't want to just, I am forever grateful. Like we said, to the Big East for giving me an opportunity. But I want to be a national guy. I have aspirations to, hey, it would be a dream to do a selection Sunday or do the NCAA tournament someday. And and oh, by the way, for me it's like I, college basketball gave me an entry point. As you know, Phil, I'm a sports guy. And so do I have aspirations to like if I know people identify me as this guy, but like for play by play, would I ever have aspirations to try in the world where there are 7,000 college football games on television on a Saturday? Do I have the aspiration to try that? Or, I mean, the NFL, that's a select group of people that call that. Like, never say never. I have dreams and hopes, and we'll see what happens. And I think the joy and the passion that I bring to college basketball is so unique, but it's a joy and passion I have for everything. And maybe somebody will give that entry point at some point. If that happens, I'll be ready for it. But for me, college basketball has passionate fans who have looked for people to give them an outlet, or give them a place where they can talk about it throughout the year from when the portal opens to the preseason to in season to that loss in November. And, you know, a guy like John Rothstein, right? A guy like Andy Katz, for years, a guy like a Jeff Goodman, the national guys who had done it. Here's the thing though, there's not, you know, 25, 30, 40 of them. I quickly realized. And I'm like, I've got the hustle. I'm watching games. I'm watching teams. I'm gonna tell people what I think I see and tell people what I see. And so it's a couple of things. It's one, I think it's just, for me, it's like I can hop on here and record a TikTok or record an IG video and give you my minute long thoughts unscripted. I did a March video when March kicked off and people said, "Did you script that or rehearse that?" I spoke from the heart. Well, that's just that God-given talent. But for me with college basketball, it's like I could tell people what I think I see. Not always going to be right for sure, but I love dialoguing. I love talking with the fans. So I think it's just having a social presence. You know, I've got a great representative, a guy by the name of Kevin Belby at CAA who does an elite job, as you well know, Field. And
Of
Kevin
course.
said,
The great Belby.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
what's that?"
The great Kevin
Great Kevin
Belby.
Belby. And Kevin told me last year, he said, "You have an ability to get in touch with your fans, maximize it on social media, and give them tastes of it." So I started to really grow that side even more. And in addition to putting my thoughts down, in simple tweets, it was like, here's 5 teams that I think can win it all. Here's my final four right now. And one, it was like, yeah, people care. Two, it was like, if you do good content, there's a place for this because not a lot of people are doing that nationally this time of year. Where, yeah, it's easy to go in a studio or host a show or do a game, but can you do like raw, authentic, just regular social videos that give people a taste of what your thoughts are? Because it makes people feel like, oh, I'm not subscribing to this. I get it for free. All right, I'm going to engage with it. I'm going to engage with him. He's not putting it behind some paywall. I'm into this. I want this. I love this. It has just been a will. I look at this as my way of playing the game. So if a fan asks me for something, I owe it to them. If I'm gonna win, quote unquote, I owe it to them to have done my homework and give them an answer because somebody cared enough to ask me for my thoughts on this team or this game or what happened to Gonzaga or what's happened to Baylor this season or how does Purdue make a run in the post Zach Edey era or what does UConn look like in the NCAA tournament? Or how the heck did Rick Pitino resurrect St. John's to this degree? How did the SEC get this good? Well, there's a reason for that. Let's tell the story behind that. I I am grateful. I am thankful beyond measure that fans care enough about what I think enough to ask me about that. But for me, it is a passion. It is as a fan, I want to know what other people think about the teams I watch. So when people ask me and I've known that team, I'm going to give them what I think that they want. And so it's been that effort, that passion, the right people, behind it, like a Kevin and like others who have said, follow your passion and see where it can take us. And that's what I've tried to do as much as possible to say somebody gave me an opportunity. Now it's time to maximize it.
It's worked out masterfully. Your hard work and your effort, I think, will continue to pay off in significant ways. But now to end this up, I want to sort of imagine that you and I have the football down 6 points, 2 minutes. So we're going to go speed up. We're going to pick up the pace here. We're scoring a touchdown no
I
matter
hope
what
we have
by
the
the end of
right
this drive.
quarterback.
We do. Whoever you want, that's a good way to start. That's a good way to start. And I fear to ask this question. So normally I wouldn't timestamp the time that we are recording this, but it's March 3rd because, as you know, NFL free agency is a week away and things could change in very significant ways from right now. But we'll start here. Who do you want to be the Cleveland Browns quarterback in 2025 and hopefully beyond?
Shador Sanders.
Okay. It's a good one there. Colorado quarterback who could very well go number two overall. If you think about the Mount Rushmore of broadcasters, you can make this. You can take this wherever you want. You can include Cleveland people. You can make it only about college basketball. You can just think in the history of sports. Who comes to mind for you?
Jim Donovan, the late
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 great
great
Browns.
face of
Yep,
the
both.
Browns. God bless him, Jimmy. You're the best. Vern Lundquist, who I think
Onion,
is
baby.
just stay. First off, I love him. I think he's awesome. I think he was always his authentic self. Him at 16 at the
Great
Masters.
golf
There's
game.
no to me,
Yeah.
it's one of the all-time sports broadcasting like things. Like if you're a junkie for the Masters or golf, you know that Vern was at the 16 tower at the Masters. Like I'm just convinced that Vern lived in the tower on 16 at Augusta for like longer than the 4 days, but like he actually lives there throughout the summer and just like sleeps there and calls anybody.
It's the most soothing voice ever,
So
right?
soothing. And him with Tiger and him on the tournament, phenomenal. He would be two. Um, then it gets interesting because there's so many tremendous voices through the years. I'm gonna for the passion level, Kevin Harlan. I think Kevin's just
One of a kind.
Kevin is one of a kind. Another guy who does it so authentically and in such fantastic fashion. Like he is
So many sports
so
too.
many sports. He's amazing. And then number 4, right? I get a Mount Rushmore, so it's a fourth person on it. And it would be hard this month not to say Bill Raftery because I just think that when I get this job, like when I start doing this, I'll be quick on this. Like you dream of just being associated or being in the same room with Bill. I never thought I'd actually get a chance to work with him. It has been one of the greatest joys of life to get to work and sit down and work with Bill a few times because you find out why he's an amazing broadcaster. And it's because it's from the heart and he does prep work out the wazoo. He is elite.
His work ethic too is just like unmistakable. I know. I mean, to do it this age with this energy level is still incredible. I love the opening possession, identifying exactly how the defense is playing on that first possession. All right, how about last one here? You're now such a professional that you may be tethered to a room somewhere because you have no other choice. But what's the ideal way to watch the first weekend of March Madness, especially that Thursday and Friday when you've got 16 games, 32 games in total, but 16 a day on Thursday and Friday?
So the ideal way to do it, I think if you're a fan, is you better be off work or off school or whatnot, and just sit down on the couch, have the snacks ready to go, have the DoorDash ready, the Dash Pass ready for at least one call. You might need two, and just camp out and get ready for one of the great days of your life because it's going to be phenomenal theater and adrenaline and all that. Terrific. Have the bracket ready, have the pen out, be ready to cross off or check off to make yourself feel good. Teams that you got right or you got wrong. For me, what's my ideal? I think it's what I'm going to do this year. So, what I'm going to do this year is I will go to a first round and second round site. So I think we'll see what happens. But I'm in New Jersey, and my wife's due May 9th, so we're expecting. So I would prefer to not be in like Seattle the first weekend and the second weekend because we're going to be getting close to it here soon.
You just never know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think I'm gonna go up to Providence for the first weekend because they're hosting the first weekend of the tournament. So I'll spend Thursday, I'll have my laptop ready to go. I'll be watching other first day games, and I'll be in Providence. Then Friday, we'll just be in town. So I think what I'm gonna hang out, at whatever the Providence local sports bar. Shout out, there's a bar named Snookers. They got like 75 TVs and they got a big bill. It's a billiards bar. I don't play billiards or any of that, but like they've got a bunch of TVs. And I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna have a dozen wings, and I'm gonna say let's buckle up and let's enjoy the ride of the NCAA tournament. I'll be on my laptop and I'll be tweeting things throughout the day and giving observations. But then like Saturday, more games. And you want to, for me, it's like, I want to have a mix of a taste of the arena, of the taste of the buzzer beater or the drama. I've been fortunate already in my career. I was live at the Chris Jenkins shot. It was the first national title. When people say, "What's the best national championship game you've covered?" The first one I covered was Chris Jenkins shot. It will be very
Hard to beat that.
like when I walked out that night, I'm like, well, it's all downhill from here. No, no, like no. I've been fortunate enough to see UMBC beat Virginia. I was in the building. I watched it happen live.
Wow.
Like I've seen some
Man.
crazy moments already in my time covering the sport, and that's what I'll do. That's my dream weekend.
Hard to beat that right there. It's hard to beat catching up with you, John Fanta. I have so much respect for everything that you do, the way you go about your business. And I like to see people who are quality individuals succeed and thrive. You've had plenty of it, but even more great success. And your greatest success, by the way, becoming a father is just around the corner. So good luck with everything. And thank you so much for joining us here on the show
God
today.
bless my wife this month. I totally outkicked my coverage. I appreciate it, Field. Thank you so much for having me. I love your passion, and this was awesome. So I really appreciate you guys, and to all the fans out there who are following throughout March, thank you. Love you, and let's have a heck of a month of madness.
So, in my position now, working and covering the NFL, it's hard to root for teams. That makes it a lot easier to root for people. And if you're not rooting for John Fanta to continue to do massive things, I'm not sure what's wrong with you. I just really enjoy everything about how he got to where he is right now. And it's so obvious how it happened. John Fanta is exactly who he is. He's authentically John Fanta. He is unapologetically himself. And I think there is so much to admire about that. If you enjoyed the show today, please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're watching right now, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube page. We always appreciate your feedback. It certainly means a lot to us. And finally, one more thing before we go. Field Talk Podcast is brought to you by Roback. That's RHOBACK.com. Use my name, Field, for 20% off your first order. The best fit, the best feel. If you've watched this show at all, you know that I live in it. If you don't take my word for it, if you can't take my word for it, go ahead and try it out yourself. Until next time, we'll talk to you all again soon.